You know, it's honestly incredible. I'm not even 30 years old yet, but I can still more or less blow a kid's mind by saying I was a child before DVDs, before YouTube, and before internet was common in everyone's home. And one effect this had is that if you got a really weird movie on VHS back then, you had no way of knowing what you were in for. We all had those weird ass movies that nobody knew where it came from but somehow ended up on your shelves. And in my case, one of those movies was 1991's The Magic Riddle. I have no idea who bought this, when we got it, or why anyone brought it home to us. All I know is that we had it and I watched it a bunch of times as a kid because, well, it was on the shelf. As you can see, the title is written on it in Danish too, so this is the very same tape from when I was a kid. Although we will of course be looking at the English language version. I haven't watched this thing in like 20 years, and literally all I remember about it is that it, like Shrek about a decade later, is a hodgepodge of popular fairy tales crammed into one story. I later learned that it was created by an Australian studio called yoram-gross, who is behind a few classic pieces of children's programming in Australia, such as Dot and the Kangaroo and its many sequels, and the cartoon series Adventures of Blinky Bill. So, who knows? Maybe what we have here is a genuine long-lost children's classic or something like that. And since I'm still on a bit of a fairy tale kick after all that Disney talk in the last episode, I think it's about time we give it a whirl. The film actually starts pretty sweetly with an old woman singing about how her grandmother told her fairy tales when she was little and how she's now carrying that on with her own grandchildren. Though hers are a bit different.
And now I am a grandmama, telling stories as I knit. Though I confess I sometimes tend to mix them up just a bit. Now, how did it go? Once upon a time, there were two little pigs. And now they went a-walking in the wood and soon met Big Bad Riding Hood. Or did they meet Pinocchio? Good heavens, I don't know. Cinderella and the 7 wolves, I'm sure they're in the plot. Or what about that Snow White dwarf? Was he there? Or maybe not. Oh dear.
So as Grandma settles down to tell her fairy tale her way, we cut to our main character Cindy. Cinderella, get it? Getting caught in a rainstorm with a carriage and nearly crashing through a bridge until she gets rescued by a handsome young man. He promises to fix everything and sends her home to the widow's house. Here we meet the widow, Cindy's evil stepmother, who bitches Cindy out for losing the cart. Hello, police? Yes, right, I'd like to report on some indecent exposure. Jesus Christ! Those tits aren't just saggy, they're growing out of her damn stomach! So yeah, during some really shitty slapstick, she orders Cindy to clean up the whole kitchen for when she invites the prince over to meet her own daughters the next day. Which of course gives Cindy a cue to a terrible song. Which of course her cat Puss and every other animal in the place joins in on.
Cindy, go and wash the window. Cindy, sweep the hall.
Cindy, when you finish, scrub the kitchen wall to wall.
Cindy, have you cleaned the laundry? Cindy, mop the floor. Cindy, don't forget to dust behind the kitchen door.
And as if to apologize for this amazing cacophony of animal voices being too short, we then instantly cut to the widow singing her own song about her motivations for mistreating Cindy.
Because I'm mean, mean, mean. It's great to be mean. I love it. Mean, mean, mean. Can't wait to be mean.
Oh, well, I guess that's all the motivation she needs. She's literally just a bitch. Actually, no. She does have more motivation than that. Because as we find out during this 4-minute long song, she explains that she's looking for Cindy's late grandfather's hidden will. This is because she's convinced that he left the entire estate and all his riches to Cindy with nothing left for her. And so she wants to destroy it to ensure her own future before Cindy finds it.
The day of her marriage, she'll ride in a carriage with satin and laces and nice social graces. And what about me? There'll be nothing for me. Nothing but stale bread and misery. Nothing but winter and poverty. And how will my daughters face hardship and strife when they're just getting used to the good things in life?
Well, shit. She kind of has a point there, doesn't she? Horrible abuse and spoiling her kids aside, that is a pretty genuine concern. This looks like olden times and she wants to, survive and provide for her children. But at the same time, she started this song saying that she's just mean because she likes it. So which is it? Are we supposed to hate her for abusing Cindy? Or feel sorry for her for not wanting to starve? Make up your goddamn mind! Also, I think the widow might be doubling for the ugly witch from Snow White. Just look at her, she looks like goddamn Hugo! And for those of you unfamiliar with Hugo, I'd just like to apologize on behalf of my country. So there's the basic premise of the movie for you. There's a will that can ensure Cindy's future, but she doesn't know that it exists. That night, the old woman from the intro appears after Cindy falls asleep and does all of her chores for her. When one of the widow's daughters spot her, she explains that she's Cindy's grandmother, who used to babysit all three girls, but who the widow sent away to the woods years ago, where she now lives with her husband's old wood-carved statues. She makes the widow's daughter promise not to tell anybody she saw her, although I don't really understand why. I don't understand this situation. It seems implied that Cindy's grandfather was a legal guardian before, so wouldn't the grandmother be that now? Or is the widow her actual stepmother? It's never made clear. And why doesn't the grandmother know where the will is? Wouldn't she be able to one day just go up to the house with the will in hand and go, "Fuck you, widow, everything belongs to Cindy"? How does this situation make a lick of sense? The next day, Prince Philip, who turns out to be the guy from the beginning, drops by to see Cindy, but is immediately dragged off by the widow in a flurry of trollish wailing and shitty slapstick to meet her daughter so they can show him their new dance.
Sisters, sisters, no one can resist us. Sisters, sisters, beautiful and fair.
Oh sure, how could anyone? Why, it's the Pippi Longstockings and Miss Piggy crossover that nobody asked for! And also, they have this habit of literally dragging people off, so resisting seems kinda difficult. Oh, you think you find this off-putting? Look at Philip, he's more terrified than the audience. And honestly, who can blame him? Look how everybody's acting. The place looks like a goddamn crack house. Cindy, of course, is hard at work during all this, milking the cows with puss for company.
May I, Daisy?
No! No! What the fuck is wrong with you? You can't use a shot like that with a character called Cindy's puss! After that lovely sight, Philip appears and invites Cindy out for a picnic, which the widow then punishes her for by making her paint the kitchen overnight. Cindy passes out from exhaustion, prompting her grandmother to show up once more. This time, however, the widow spots her and the two old ladies get into a fight. So what, is this like the new version of bum fights? Does the winner of this old lady smackdown win the exclusive right to give the neighbor kids butter cookies? The widow ultimately sicks her dogs on grandma in order to chase her away, but they're too busy chasing puss. During all this shitty slapstick, Cindy runs off and meets Pippi Longstockings, who explains the situation and tells her to go see her grandmother in the morning, and gives her a Red Riding Hood to disguise herself with when she does. The widow, meanwhile, asks her evil mirror for advice on her next move. So you want me to dress up as an offensive Jewish stereotype and flash you in the park? Well, okay, you're the magic mirror. Meanwhile, Grandma is racking her brain trying to figure out where the will could possibly be, with her only clue being the magic riddle that Cindy's grandfather left behind.
Now, how did it go? Riddle me diddle and riddle me dare. I've hidden my will, and I won't tell you where. Riddle me diddle and riddle me diz, but little Pinocchio, he knows where it is. Oh, that's right now. He carries the secret wherever he goes, and only Pinocchio. Only Pinocchio. Only Pinocchio knows. Yes, he carries the secret wherever he goes, and only Pinocchio, only Pinocchio knows.
That's not really much of a riddle, though, is it? Did grandfather honestly write a long-ass song just to tell people to ask Pinocchio? After this little ditty, the widow appears as a rocking chair salesman, straps grandma in a rocking chair, and hides her in the castle of 100 doors to ensure that Cindy never finds her. She then decides to scare Cindy away from ever trying to see her grandmother again by acting out the whole Red Riding Hood fairy tale using her dopey-ass dog costume. Come on, lady, put a little effort into it! You said yourself your children's lives are on the line! Look at that, she didn't even bother to change her fucking shoes!
Bye. And thanks, Mr.
Big, beautiful wall.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not what BBW stands for, but hey, whatever makes you feel better. So yeah, the Red Riding Hood bit plays off as it always does, and a crestfallen Cindy runs off to a nearby pond to cry. Here she spots the ugly duckling being mistreated by its family, So naturally she decides to sing to it.
I know what it's like being a poor, ugly duckling and wishing that you were a swan. They may treat you badly because you are different. You're different, but you can still dream.
Okay, so I'm really trying to understand this scene here because we're obviously supposed to see a connection between Cinderella and the ugly duckling, and yeah, so far so good, that makes sense, but what the fuck is up with this ending? She puts the duckling back and it swims back to its family and they welcome it back with open arms? But how does this add up? Is the movie trying to show that she wants to go back because she hopes that one day they might stop abusing her? Is she really trying to justify the abuse she's been through, or is she just that broken of a person? Is this supposed to be the movie's big, hopeful, heartwarming moment? What the hell is going on? Never mind. Philip spots her and appears to confess his love and give her a ring. At least until Pippi and her sister Piggy spot this and run off to fetch their mother so she can break it up. Because Philip, what with being a grown-ass man and a noble and all, is obviously completely powerless to tell her to shove her attitude up her cooter. Makes sense to me. So back at the house, a terribly sad Cindy discovers that the wolf she met was actually just a costume when her animal friends find it. And naturally, she instantly swears to get back at her wicked stepmother for her abuse and her lies, and run to Philip for support to find her long-lost grandmother. Or at least that's what would happen if Cindy had a brain under all that hair somewhere, but no. Instead, she does this.
I know, you want me to play with you. Three little pigs into a wood, shonky-hitchy-coo-coo. They kind of like the neighborhood, shonky-hitchy-coo-coo. They were keen to settle down, they found the classy part of town. But everywhere those porkers went, there were no rooms for rent.
Oh my god, this might be the worst song I've ever heard in a cartoon. It's not catchy, it's not clever. Even as a retelling of Three Little Pigs, it has no place in this fairy tale movie. It's not funny. It has nothing to do with anything. Even the chorus sounds like it doesn't want to fucking be there. Bitch, you just found out that your stepmother has scared the crap out of you to keep you away from your grandmother, who she has most likely either kidnapped or killed, just to have an excuse to keep abusing you. Is this really the time to play with barnyard animals? The daughters once again decide to fuck with Cindy for no real reason. Piggy lets all the animals loose and frames Cindy for it so the widow will abuse her more, but Pippi does take pity and sends her off to look for Grandma again. And yet she did nothing to stop her sister from pulling her prank, so whose side is this girl on? When Cindy gets to Grandma's house, however, she finds she is no longer there. And like with every situation she faces in this movie, all she can do is cry and cling to the nearby wooden statues.
If only you were alive, you could all be my friends.
Jesus Christ. Every line of dialogue she gets, she sounds less like an abused youth and more like a serial killer. Yeah. So the 7 dwarves are all wooden statues that Cindy can wake up with a kiss for some reason. Or, well, there is actually one more.
Now the world over, from London to Tokyo, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Pinocchio!
So, since the dwarves saw the kidnapping happen, they tell Cindy about it and rush off to save Grandma. But on the way there, they happen upon an invitation to a masked ball that the widow is throwing. Because she found Cindy's music box, reason that she likes to dance, and that this will lure her out of hiding. Just an absolutely fucking foolproof plan there, lady. Now, Cindy and her friends are obviously way too smart to fall for such a stupid...
We could all go. Somebody there may have seen Grandma.
You know where she is! You were going there 5 minutes ago!
But the widow would recognize me.
Don't worry, Cindy. It's a masked ball.
That's what makes it a trap, you literal fucking blockheads! So then the dwarves make her a dress, a carriage, and a mask out of snow. But they forgot to make shoes, so she uses Pinocchio's because I guess that's funny? They then warn her that all these fancy clothes will melt at midnight, so they have to work fast. At the ball, where only like half the guests are wearing masks anyway for some reason, everyone is enamored by Cindy and nicknames her Snow White. Get it? And Philip recognizes her thanks to the ring. Meanwhile, Pippi and Pinocchio seem to hit it off.
You're a really good dancer, and very handsome.
And you're a really pretty girl.
Am I? Thank you.
Yeah, I had a feeling that the closest this girl would ever get to finding a man was grabbing the nearest phallic-looking piece of wood. So because Cindy is so busy gawking over Philip that she completely forgets why they're there, she and the dwarves have to run away when midnight strikes. She leaves behind one of Pinocchio's shoes, Pippi recognizes it, and Widow puts two and two together and figures that she's hiding in Grandma's cottage. You know, pretty much the one place she could hide at all. Brilliant. The dwarves then suddenly remember that they already know where Grandma is and hurry off to the castle of 100 doors to save her. Again. Meanwhile, the widow puts on a disguise and heads for the cottage where she happens to run into Pinocchio.
My boy, my son. I've been searching everywhere for you. Oh, I'm your mother.
What? That's your cover story? You gave birth to a wooden puppet? You could have said anything. You're an old woman who got lost. You're a friend of Grandma's. You sell wood polish. Anything! I mean, not even Pinocchio is stupid enough to fall for that one.
Mother!
So while Pinocchio brings his mommy back to meet Cindy, the dwarves finally arrive at the castle of 100 doors to look for Grandma. And so does Philip while looking for Cindy somehow. The place is a weird, mind-bendy location where doors appear and disappear and rooms have MC Escher physics, causing all who go inside to get hopelessly lost forever. Meaning they're now all trapped even after they manage to find Grandma. I have no idea if this is from an actual fairy tale or not, but it's a pretty neat idea, and it almost manages to be genuinely spooky thanks to the sounds of Grandma calling for help and the overall sense of hopelessness. Or it would manage to be spooky if it wasn't for the god-awful editing. I mean, it's easily the best part of the movie. In the same way that the best part of a Transformers movie is the fact that it eventually ends. Back at the cottage, the widow uses a poison apple to hypnotize Cindy somehow. But Pinocchio keeps messing it up, and then they lose the apple, and they have to find her apple, and then there's all this slapstick, and... Oh my god, you know what? Fuck this, I can't take it. We're speeding ahead. The widow eventually manages to make Cindy fall asleep, but then Pinocchio causes her to fall down a well, and he then runs off to the castle of 100 doors to get the others for help. After he explains the situation and Philip proves to be the only one able to connect the dots, it turns out Pinocchio accidentally got a string of his shoe stuck on a nail when he ran inside, which allows everybody to follow the string and find a way back out. So everyone returns to the cottage. Philip decides to creepily smooch a sleeping girl, which makes her wake up because fairy tales, and Grandma finally does what she should have done back when her fucking husband died and tells everybody about the will. And naturally, the widow, who has now given up her disguise, demands to know where it is.
The answer is somewhere in Grandpa's magic riddle. Riddle me diddle and riddle me diz, but little Pinocchio, he knows where it is. That's right now.
Alright, Block Boy, start spilling the beans. Where's the money? Where's the will? Who is Kaiser Soze?
And only Pinocchio knows. Pinocchio and knows.
Take it easy. I'm rather fond of this nose. Ouch!
The will.
The world's greatest detective, everybody! Move over, bats! There's a new sleuth in town! Magic riddle my ass! This whole time it was just a pun? What the hell, Grandpa? Seriously, what kind of grandfather was this guy? I mean, think about it. He's on death's door and presumably his children are dead, meaning he only has his granddaughter. And then he decides that the best way to secure her future is to put her in the care of an abusive bitch. And then he decides to troll everybody by leaving the only hint to the location of the will that will set her for life in a long-ass song that he only teaches to his doddering wife, who is so lost in Alzheimer's that she thinks there's a fairy tale called Cinderella and the Seven Wolves. Bitch or not, I'm not sure the widow is the villain here. Anyway, Cindy gets all of her grandfather's riches, Philip proposes to her, Pippi and Pinocchio pair up as well, and they're even nice enough to let the widow and Miss Piggy stay and employ as maids so they don't go homeless. Happily ever after, right?
Cindy, your grandfather carved us all. We came to life for you and anyone else in need of help. But now our job is done, and we must turn back into wood with the sound of your wedding bells.
Oh my god, really? You're gonna pull an asshole ending like that? What is wrong with you, yoram-gross? Who the hell ends their children's fairy tale movie by murdering 87% of the main character's friends? Is there no limit to how big of a dick this grandfather was? Oh wait, Pinocchio gets to stay alive. Presumably because he's the only one who got laid. Yeah, that's right, fuck you dwarves. Nobody cares about you. Come back when you get your dicks wet. Oh wait, you can't, you're fucking dead. Tough titties, boys. So with that charming ending, Cindy and Philip get married and the movie is finally over. So, no, the Magic Riddle is not quite the lost animation classic I was hoping it would be. I feel pretty confident that I can say that without stepping on anybody's toes. But it certainly tries to be, at least according to the trailer.
From the studios of yoram-gross comes their most ambitious production to date, The Magic Riddle.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't use the word ambitious as one of your selling points, buddy. Ambition is fine and admirable and all. It's just not always equal to quality. I honest to God think this movie is trying really hard to be the magical adventure it sells itself as. I think they were really trying to do something great here. The problem is that they did so by forcefully cramming every single children's movie trope into it that they could think of. Every scene apparently has to include some sort of shitty slapstick. Every shot of a villain has to include them cackling like madmen. Fairy tale characters are added at random whether or not they make sense to the scene, and everyone and everything gets a goddamn song. It's a complete mess. Now, I don't mind the fairy tale concept, that can be and has been done well, but this movie feels like somebody cranked out a script in half an afternoon and then started production. It's nearly incomprehensible, and most of the protagonists come across either as passive or downright malicious, like this supposedly amazing grandfather. There is a reason movie scripts usually go through several drafts. It's to trim the fat, remove unnecessary scenes and characters, tighten the story, and make sure motivations and events are clear to the viewer. I don't think anyone here actually read the first draft before they started production. So, no, this fairy tale didn't exactly end well for us, but it was still pretty fun to revisit an oddity from my childhood years. And besides, now I have something to use to punish my future children with without fear of getting arrested. See you next time, folks. Well now, wasn't that magical, kids? If you want more colorful adventures like that, why not check out my channel and watch some of my other videos about weird movies, cartoons, and video games and other stuff. All you gotta do is give this video a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel. And if you really like my stuff, you can also follow me on social media or even support me on Patreon. Links are in the description. See you next time!